Mr. Speaker, fellow members of Parliament, Emancipation Day 2021 once again has allowed us to humbly reflect on the sacrifices of our ancestors and their astounding will and courage exhibited in their fight for freedom. The enslavement of Africans remains one of the most odious events of mankind's history, where millions of men, women, and children were enslaved and endured unimaginable acts of violence, oppression, and exploitation over 4 centuries. Through it all, the African peoples suffered not only a loss of freedom. Slavery captured them from their homes, families, and communities, and robbed millions of people of their culture, language, religion, and their identity. Mr. Speaker, the 1763 Berbice Rebellion remains the first rebellion recorded in this hemisphere, led by enslaved Africans who established a form of government for over a year until it was brutally put down by the Dutch colonizers. These and many other slave-led rebellions in Guyana and the British West Indies played a major role in the abolition of slavery. The enslavement of Africans and their descendants remain the worst crime against humanity, and hence the ongoing fight for an apology and reparations demands justice for the historical wrongdoings committed during slavery. This remains a stark reminder that grievous aspects of slavery hang unresolved many generations later. Even today, as the debates rage in the corridors of power at the United Nations. Mr. Speaker, despite the abolition of slavery, true emancipation remains with many challenges to be overcome as a result of the lingering aftermath of slavery. Globally, issues of racism and other social, political, and economic forms of discrimination remain in some places entrenched, particularly in territories where slavery reigned centuries ago. While solutions to these issues continue to be sought globally, regionally, and nationally, there are successful takeaways that emancipation has produced in our country. When we consider some of the deeper influences of emancipation, we need only look to the names and histories of several of Guyana's villages to be reminded of the village movement, which stands as living testimony to the determination and drive of our African brothers and sisters, who were resolute in their aim to make a home and own the land they occupied after they were freed, and to develop sustainable livelihoods for themselves and their families. Mr. Speaker, from 1839 to 1852, freed Africans had purchased 25 villages for over $1 million, money they had saved by the sweat of their brows and pooled together for the betterment of their people. Today, villages such as Victoria, Buxton, Litchfield, Golden Grove, Dartmouth, Queenstown, Bed of Wacton, Pleasance, Petersall, Farm, Gardner of Eden, Danielstown, and Bushlot, and many more, all hold deep roots in the significance of freedom and ownership among the freed Africans. Mr. Speaker, no such similar movement occurred in other countries of collective purchases and development of communal land ownership. They established organized communities with schools, farms, housing, and churches after the proclamation of emancipation. These villages serve as a demonstration of their will to reclaim their identity, establish themselves as truly free, and an ultimate form of resistance for the inhumane treatment they had endured. But even more importantly, they were committed to development and progress. This resolve of our African forefathers is a worthwhile trait that we, as proud Guyanese, have embraced from generation to generation, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or class. Our national profile is one of hard work, perseverance, and tolerance. Most of our leaders, professionals, and businessmen have come from humble beginnings and have struggled individually to overcome and to achieve their dreams. In the midst of negativity that assails us from many quarters, we must give homage to our ancestors who came across the Middle Passage and made this their home. We must always stand together as a unified nation and a sovereign state, regardless of the circumstances. We must remember that our African brothers and sisters were able to achieve emancipation because they stood together as one. Mr. Speaker, unity, the concept of building one Guyana, is a message that has been reiterated by His Excellency, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali. And it underlies the core of every goal and every initiative of the PPPC administration. The PPPC administration is unshakable in its belief that our diversity, rather than being looked at as a negative, should be seen as a strength that binds us, and together we can stand as one nation and continue to build on the foundations that our forefathers have laid. Equally, Mr. Speaker, one Guyana means that your government has a duty to provide for all citizens within available means, and just as important, that we as citizens respect the differences and work towards building a harmonious, modern, and democratic society. Mr. Speaker, we are duty-bound by no less than the preamble of the Constitution of Guyana, which states, and I quote, "We proud heirs of the indomitable will of our forebears, in a spirit of reconciliation and cooperation, proclaim this Constitution in order to forge a system of governance that promotes concerted effort and broad-based participation in national decision-making in order to develop a viable economy and a harmonious community based on democratic values, social justice, fundamental human rights, and the rule of law." End of quote. Thus, Mr. Speaker, the principle of oneness is a critical premise of our Constitution, and its corollary, inclusionary democracy, is also enshrined in Article 13. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that our ancestors would have wholeheartedly supported these objectives, as these were fundamental to their calls for freedom. We in the PPPC administration are committed to ensure that our people are at the center of economic, social, cultural, and environmental policies as we seek to bring forth prosperity for all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, and as we have not wasted time in demonstrating our commitment to these objectives with multiple programs at central, regional, and community levels, aimed at reducing poverty, removing draconian taxes from the backs of the people, improving people's quality of life, realizing dreams of working people for house lots, houses, scholarships, and equal access to health and education and developmental opportunities. Mr. Speaker, there should be no room nor tolerance for racial prejudice and discrimination in our midst. If we are to achieve one Guyana, there must be room for all, regardless of race, religion, class, gender, geographic location, language, disability, and sexual identity. Mr. Speaker, emancipation signifies the importance of perseverance, resilience, justice, and respect for human rights. These lessons we can continue to observe in our everyday lives as individuals and as a nation. Moreover, the lessons learned can help guide us as we strive to overcome other issues that plague us today. A global pandemic and a natural disaster by flooding, the likes of which Guyana has never seen before, has taught us that we must together persevere and be resilient in the face of major threats to our existence. Mr. Speaker, we are constantly reminded of the need to appreciate the freedom of our beliefs and respect for our differences in our multi-ethnic society in Guyana. Such freedoms and respect were rights fought for in the fight for emancipation and all the subsequent struggles for independence and democracy. Mr. Speaker, both as a government and as a nation, we must remember the strength that lies in our unity. For we are each other's business, we are each other's greatness, and we are each other's bond. In our rich tapestry of diversity, there is room for all to thrive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members of Parliament.